welcome. This is Dr. Christoph vonGamm, CEO and founder of vonGammCom Global, an advisory and executive search firm based in Silicon near Zurich. We're operating globally across the world, and one of the specialities we're having is big deals. So helping firms in developing and designing and executing on bigger, larger transactions that are lasting long term for the sake of both sides, means of course the buyer and the seller. So, big deals. What's the characteristic of a big deal? First of all, of course, typically it's always a matter of perspective. So when you're having a big deal, usually it is in a way that big that you put an extra effort as a buying company or as a selling company in order to make this deal happen. So it determines maybe some 10% of your business or something like this. So, and this is then something where I'd be talking about a big deal. What is then very interesting with a big deal is, of course, that there's a couple of elements in a big deal that are unusual for normal transaction. First of all, you are, as a seller, heavily emotionally involved. Why? Well, first of all, because it determines your success, it determines your future, it might be also determining your money and your career. So you are not rational anymore. That's a challenge. So how do you overcome this challenge as a seller? That's a big question. From a buyer's perspective, by the way, it's also very similar. Often a big deal for a buyer also involves a whole lot of emotions on a board level side even, or on other areas, and this of course makes it then also difficult for the buyer to assess. Well, also one of the last things that are highly interesting on a big deal is it has political aspects. So to make it short, companies that come together for a big transaction usually first need a kind of political alignment in order to make this deal happen. So what does this mean? Let me look at this picture. What you're seeing here is that there's three elements of a big deal. There's a political element, a rational element, and an emotional element. And these three elements come together. And usually when you're working on those elements, you have to watch out that there's different phases that work in a way very often quite interestingly, so that you need to first watch those elements. So let me give you an example. When you want to buy a car, you first think about the political ramification of buying the car. So for example, it might be politically wise when you're working in a French company to buy only a French car. Well, sad for you, maybe you might be saying, because you better like Maseratis or so, but in that respect you had your political choice is quite narrow. So there's Peugeot, there's Renault, there's Citroën, that's about it. Of course you have different makes and brands, so and then you can discuss. So there's this political element of it that determines a bit what you can be choosing. Then of course there's rationality inside, like for example, do you want to have a 4-seat, a 2-seat, a sedan, a combi or whatever else, and of course the financial side, the price side, that makes a bit of a role. So you understand these are the rationalities. It also should maybe contain some more kind of luggage space and so on. It needs to have some fuel consumption aspects and so on, and all this. Wonderful. So you narrow the choice with the rationalities. At the end of the day, when you select a car, it's an emotional thing. Cars are highly emotional. When you think about, for example, that they are designed in a way that the front looks like a face, the back looks like a person's butt a bit, and also everything else is an extension of yourself as a person. Then of course it becomes highly emotional. How you sit inside, how the leather feels, how it smells, and so on. And this is something you have to observe, how your emotional feel then goes towards how this is extending yourself. So you might be saying, okay, is this the same with the services deal? Yes, of course it is. Also, this extends yourself, the way you feel politically, first of all. Is the company you're choosing the right one, politically speaking? Are, of course, the rational aspects the right ones? And, of course, the emotional aspects of working with the right people. So, are those people that are working with you the right ones to get in sync and extend your personal reach? So that's something to discuss. So why are we treating this? Because typically companies fall short on one of the three elements, either politically, rationally, or emotionally. And this is something that needs to be highly observed. Typically, what also comes into place that the sales leaders who lead the deals, are those who bring in the whole company in a services environment and bring this together. So, but they're the anchor man of this. So they need to be something like superstars, but in a very decent way. They need to be trustworthy. They need to be diligent. They need to fit to the company that's on the other side. So not every sales leader fits to the company that's on the other side. Think about a public sector company that is highly different, for example, to a bank or to an insurance company. And I, by the way, also made the same observations with me and my former teams, that some people fit highly well together and some just don't. And it's not about the personality of the people that they're not good, but they just don't fit emotionally, for example, or they fit emotionally. Some are highly adaptable actually, but then they don't provide that much of a kind of effect. So you have to choose, of course, the right sales leaders and the right people on this. I mean, at the end of the day, there's many mistakes that can be made in the sales cycle of big and strategic deals. And usually, let me talk about the losses. The losses, they usually result from a lack of well-defined and well-articulated win strategy. Let me be clear about this. You have to have a strategy in order to win. And of course, also the lack of a powerful differentiator. So, because why? Those differentiators, they are buried somewhere a bit in the political element, they're a bit buried in the rational element, they're buried in the emotional element, but they're not sort of prepared in a way like a menu, that it's followable for a client to really look at it. So, and this makes it really hard for clients then to work with you, because they just don't understand you. So this is what we change in a big deal coaching session, first of all. Also, one of the things that I'd like to look at is that many individuals assigned to a sales team have an engineering or how mentality. This is good. They know how to do it, and of course they need to transport that they know how to do it. But what the client is really interested in is the what. So what we do then as a team is really to bring clear and make clear what is being provided, and then later how it's being provided. Usually this is something that needs to be made very crystal clear. What does the client get? Because this is what the client wants. He doesn't really want to know that much how it's being made. Well, a bit. It makes it more credible when you understand how it's being made. But at the end of the day, the client wants to expect, especially in a service, what he gets, because the service is so much intangible. So that's good so far. One caveat I'd have to say is, don't let yourself bury with methodologies. All of your competitors have methodologies. All of them have. So what you need to do is more like bring, to think of a kind of methodology, if there is any, that is so completely different that it's really cool to work with. And usually that is then bringing a Me Too strategy. So again, a great win strategy needs to encompass, first of all, what you want the customer to think of when they think of your firm and your offering. What is it? And then, of course, also, how do you defeat the competition? But that's secondary. What we're helping you is really, first of all, think about what you want to convey, and then secondly, how you defeat the competition. And by the way, there's a little trick. We don't tell everything in the proposal, because usually proposals leak out to competition. So you need to have some missing links in the proposal in order to make your business really viable. So that's important. So I talked about political, rational and emotional elements. There's one emotional element that is coming at the end. Very often it's called the risk thing. So let me talk about those deal phases here. You see this? In the initial deal phase, we talk about client needs and all this, and this is wonderful, and of course the cost doesn't play that much of a role. And then of course there's the alternatives to be evaluated, also against the competition, also against different type of solutions. So the solutioning plays a really big role, and of course a bit over time also a bit the price. But what really is determining at the end for virtually all of the decisions I've seen is risk. Risk, why is this? Because the risk of doing the wrong thing really makes the big difference in how to make the right choice. So what is then important for you as a seller is to deal with the risk concerns of the client. The risk might be, for example, your new company, you're not that much known to it, what you're conveying to this, how is, for example, your financial stability, have you done it before, these are risk elements. Or, for example, if you are an established company but very big and the client is very small or not that significant, how much devotion do you give to this client in order to really make this one a success? So this is the risk thing, and this is something of key importance. So last but not least, let me talk about presentation. So usually deal teams make a huge effort and stride on the whole proposal. So on the presentation itself, the PowerPoint, the deliverable, and it's a heck of an effort. But what they don't do is to talk about the deal, and the oral and the staging of the presentation. So what are they really trying to convey? What is the appearance of the people? What are they saying at what moment? How they interlock together? For example, if it's a team of 3 or 4 people, do they understand that one has to step in only when he or she's being asked and not before? Most people don't. They just want to contribute. They forget about everything because the adrenaline is flowing, and then, for example, maybe the front person or so is doing something, a bit of a mistake, then the other tries to correct because he knows it better. So, by the way, I made the same mistakes. So I know this from my own mistakes. And the key point is really, how do you stage the team that those orals are really the right thing to do. So it's about preparation. One of the worst things, by the way, I have seen in terms of making an oral is when formerly in one of the companies I was working, a person who was thinking of himself to be the boss of the bosses, flew in right after his 4 weeks vacation, absolutely unprepared, didn't know anything about the deal, and thought he's so wonderful and fantastic, and can so to say show off everything just by giving a splendid appearance. No, it is not, because he forgot during the whole preparation of the deal that he of course needs to understand the content of the deal in order to really be apt to present, and this is then really something that made the difference between success and failure. By the way, they failed miserably just because this person went into vacation for 4 weeks, showed off, and didn't know what to do. So in that respect, when you, as an executive, as an example, go with a team towards a deal, be prepared well in advance, mentally, through reviews, through everything, content-wise, what's it about, make a check 1.5 weeks in advance, 1 week in advance, 3 days in advance, and then work for the last 3 days with the team when it's about a big deal presentation, just with the team on making things happen. And this is then the team where you live and die with it. So this is one of my last advices on those things, and I have to say, when you observe those three elements, means first of all, the deal phases. Think about solution, think about price, think about risk. Then next thing is think about those three elements of the deal. It means political, rational and emotional. And then last but not least, think about not just the proposal, but also the oral presentation, how you appear as a team. When you think about those three elements, then you can win. And then you double your win rate without any issues. So how do you make this? Well, best is, of course, you call me or go to www.vonGammCom and ask me, of course, for a quote. Thank you very much and bye-bye.